legislature. And essentially what it does is if cities have camping bans, outright bans over all city property, it says that that is not outright allowed anymore. So the easiest way to put it is you can't, if you have a statement that says you can't camp here, it now has to be followed by a comma that says, but you can camp here. So for the public, that's what the state legislature has required. There are no easy answers to this, as we'll discuss tonight. It is a difficult policy to implement, but you can have restrictions so long as those restrictions are what the law calls objectively reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. Over the course of the last month, we have tried to hammer out some language over time, place, and manner. And I think we've got time, and I think we've got manner, and I think we all thought we had place pretty well there. And when we put it on a map, it was not a visual representation of what we thought that it was going to be. So here we are. And with that being said, I want to take just a minute and thank our planning staff. Eric has done a tremendous job. Hugo's not here anymore, but we really, his first week here, we put him through the ringer. He spent hours and hours and hours crafting this map.
Still smiling too.
Yeah. So Eric, thank you for your work for that. With that being said, let's start the process here. Eric, I'll let you drive.
Okay, so this is what you want to talk
We
to.
already know, let's get this, we all know this, right?
Yeah. So we've floated draft code language and getting to the place restrictions. This is what is in the current draft. And as we'll get to, we will likely either need to pull some of this back or provide an exception to one or more of these areas, specific location exceptions. So the current restrictions we have are anything zoned, any property zoned institutional public. That's mainly going to be public buildings like City Hall. A lot of parks are going to be institutional public, other public facilities are IP. Residential zones and residential structures plus 50 feet buffer around those two. Within 1,000 feet of any school in Sherwood, public, private, up and down the age groups. Within all Sherwood School District walk sheds that be established by the school district, any walk shed that they have established, any sensitive area regulated by Clean Water Services, and then also any area that reduces sidewalk width below 5 feet. So sensitive areas regulated by CWS, floodplain, wetlands, their buffers, sometimes some additional habitat gets wrapped in there as well.
Yeah, and there's a typo in there. The draft language that we had would be essentially 4 feet for the sidewalk.
4 feet, okay, thank you, 4 feet.
And I'm familiar with the word, but not used in this context. What is a walk shed? Is that just a path to school?
It's a walk zone, yeah, so maybe, yeah, so
Each school in their public school district has a walk zone where kids are required to walk, they can't ride the
Oh,
bus.
yeah, okay.
They're not required.
Well,
They're not provided by.
They're not provided by
the bus.
Yeah, okay. Oh,
They're
that-
generally within a mile of the school, or if
Yeah.
you have to cross a railroad track or a major road.
Okay, perfect. That's what.
So I'll just go through the few different maps that we have here to kind of show the progression and sort of what led to the issue. First, here's our environmental restrictions, so floodplain, wetland, et cetera. Areas in blue are the areas that are restricted. Properties in orange are city-owned properties. So we have the environmental restrictions first. This is a big one, and it precludes a lot of land from actually being available for this bill. For our code update, residentially zoned land, institutional public zoned land. So I think this is an important map. As you can see, we keep talking about we're a residential community. A lot of our city is zoned for residential uses. So as soon as we added this layer, you kind of see it took out most of the city in terms of being a viable option for a place to camp.
What's left, those like greenish colored areas?
These orange up here are left, this one's left here, this one's left here, police department is left, but you can see as soon as we added residential, and this does have institutional public as well, so the schools are covered by this. It basically took out most of the city.
And police department's not institutional?
The interesting part about the police department is it's currently zoned retail commercial. And so if it had what we call like I don't know, accurate zoning for the current use, it would have been excluded
Okay.
in this analysis, but it's still zoned commercial. But
Okay.
it's still showing up on here.
And that area across from the high school is the YMCA wooded area.
Yes, correct. Although that should be showing up on our environmental, you can kind of see
Gotcha.
yeah, it's restricted in that one.
Okay.
And then, of course, we have the school, so we're both showing the walk zones and a 1,000-foot buffer around the school. So it's kind of multiple layers in here. So a lot of overlap with the residential areas, but some additional that actually gets brought in. So when we add all of the layers onto a single map together, this is what it looks like, and this is the problem and why we're here talking about it. So the only few properties that showed up, again, the police department showed up, but it would have been excluded if it were zoned institutional public, like City Hall. There's a few kind of one-off storm facilities in the industrial areas. And then it's kind of hard to see, but if you zoom into Old Town here, there's a little bit of property of the Columbia Street lots that don't get captured in any of the buffers. So that's why we're here talking. So once we kind of added in all of the exclusions that we wanted, there really wasn't a site that stood out as a viable option. And I think here, this is kind of the difficult part, is where we need to make it a decision and figure out sort of the best of bad options. Yeah,
I just had my first suggestion. I'll let you finish your thought.
sure, just a few more slides. So again, just if we're starting not fresh, but with somewhat fresh eyes, here's again all the city-owned lots. Some of them, I'm showing some outside the city, and I'll get to that in just a second, but a lot of them are going to be in the creek, storm corridors, things in these residential areas, again, mainly storm and environmental. Really where the public property comes in is going to be in the downtown area where we have all of our public facilities and the police department as well. So I kind of broke this down to hopefully help facilitate some ideas or some, better ideas, worse ideas. I broke out city-owned facilities into 3 different categories. We have parks, that could be an option. We have city facilities, that could be an option, City Hall, Police Department, and then we have vacant lots. So things in orange are green are city parks, that may be an option. Facilities are shown in pink, including the police department and some downtown. And then vacant lots are in yellow. I'll just zoom in here to Old Town. This is where there's, I guess, the most opportunities in terms of city property. Again, green parks, yellow or vacant lots. So we have the old school site. We have some Columbia Street lots. We have a vacant lot on this one here. And then we have the city facilities as well. And I just say, I realize and understand, I don't think any of these are desirable.
What about that lot behind the PGE Training Center? I went out and looked at it. It looked like, I don't know I couldn't tell where the property lines were, but it looked like if the brush and stuff was removed, that there was some flat area up there.
Yeah. So I think you're talking about, if I zoom in here, Langer Farms Parkway is here, Home Depot is up here. PGE, the one that you're looking at, is actually owned by PGE. And so it's not a city property. We do have an easement over it. And then we have this property back here. This is the Olds Place Industrial Subdivision. And so it's kind of separate storm from, I think, the one you were looking at, unfortunately. It doesn't seem like, if we do have other situations like this, it might be a good option. The newer storm facilities where there's actually like new concrete apron and stuff, a lot of those are going to be owned by the underlying owner with an easement granted to the city. So it's likely to work as an option.
And the
then-
one behind, so you talked about the one lot there above it, is that a separate one? That's right next to it? Yeah, right here.
This one here,
You were talking about this one. Is this one also part of that?
separate one. This one's going to be the Rock Creek corridor. So I don't know if there's going to be a viable option in terms of being able to post like a big tent in this area. It's a fairly large, basically riparian area for Rock Creek. It's a street corridor.
Okay,
So are you suggesting we move away from a restricted view and toward a permitted view?
No, I would say that we need to, I think the approach is to maintain the restrictions, but understand that we need to pull back somewhere. So whether
Because it
that's,
feels like we've moved, the conversation has changed to where do we want to allow it versus where do we want to not allow it?
And I think that's the result of how small our city's footprint is with respect to the restrictions that take place.
and so I think the way that we could look at this, and when we go back to this residential, the residential. How's this stuck here?
well,
Stuck on this one.
is it, if the two options are having it right by City Hall or by the police station, I mean, I'll ask your opinion, but I'd rather have it by the police station, but I also, like, those are the two things we're asking, or are you saying other areas?
I think he's showing us what the options are at this
So,
point.
yeah, I'm showing you what the options are, and I'll just follow one last slide and then I'll.
Okay.
open. We think that, I guess we want to just reinforce that this is likely can be a temporary code until we get a better option. And so I wanted to show this slide as well, which is as soon as we start annexing properties in the Tonkin employment area that the city owns, those are opened up for options. Right now, these are owned by the city, but just outside city limits. And so they're not, for our discussion tonight, in the code that we need to get by July 1st, not an option.
Has to be within the city limits.
It has to be.
Has to be within city limits, but these would be potentially an option. This one on Roy Rogers, potentially an option in the future. And then way down the road, when Sherwood West really gets going, potentially the water tank in off of Kruger. So just to reiterate where staff sees us being at, when we start pulling stuff back, that might open something up. And so I think that's an approach. But in case that doesn't get us there quickly, we're also throwing out specific sites. So I think the approach would be keep the text of the code, all these restrictions, with the exception of a specific site. So I guess you would be making an exception of one case just to meet the code. While trying to protect the rest of what those restrictions are.
In your overlays, did you have a distinction between the school, the 1,000 foot around the school and the school walk zone? Or are they kind of combined together?
You can kind of see them, but they're on one map.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Well, I
I feel like, to me, the obvious thing to walk back is the walk zone, because the time restriction is essentially redundant with it anyway, right? If your time window is at a point in time when people aren't gonna be walking to school anyway, you've already handled the problem with the time restriction.
I will say though that the residential zone is
Overlapping with that.
the residential zone is going to be your base restriction.
But I'm just hypothetically, if you roll the walk zones back, residential, I think you have a 50-foot buffer, so that opens up like Stella Olson.
Yeah.
And those parks.
Yes.
And what about this? Why is that one? I see the black line around it. Is that not in the city?
That one is in the city. It is next to Cascade Columbia Distribution. So it's along the rail line. That's the rail line right there. There's really no public access. So when the city owns that property, it's a wetland. How we get to it to maintain it is we actually have an easement through the Cascade Columbia property.
But in terms of complying with the law, does it have to have?
I would have a legal objection, recommend against that. There's case law that says when you put people in danger, the city can be liable. And if we are encouraging people to walk down the railroad tracks to get somewhere,
Still reasonable.
I think we have an issue.
Okay, all right.
So I think where I would go is just back to this city-owned lots again and say, is there best of bad options here between parks, city facilities, and or vacant lots.
Yeah, and again, this is only talking about publicly owned, city-owned lots, not any of the private property. If we were to remove some restrictions for residential or.
Right, I think, yes,
And so even though you say residential, it's not really for the residential, it's for the,
publicly owned land
yes.
within the residential zones, yes.
Right, but
It wouldn't be allowed on residential. property.
Yeah.
But if we only did the 50-foot buffer, for instance, we could have people camping all through like the trail system, in Woodhaven, and other trail systems through town. So,
Boy, when we get careful.
Yeah.
I do not know.
so reasonable, and what was your other legal term you threw out there?
So, so there's this legal doctrine called creating the harm, where if cities put people in danger by their policies, in this case, walking down a railroad.
No, I'm talking about the law.
Objective and reasonable.
Objectively reasonable.
So is part of that calculus looking at the level of challenge that we have right now? Because because we have a very low level relative to communities around us. So not having a lot of space combined with the fact that we don't have a huge problem here, does that create an objective and reasonable standard?
Kind of, I think that's a good argument, Mayor. Like what I would say with the law says it has to be objectively reasonable from all parties involved, meaning like you can't just close one eye and say, from the city's eye, it's reasonable. You have to open both and say from these people that are experiencing homelessness, it's also reasonable. So what that means, obviously hasn't been tested yet. And as I said before, objectively reasonable is a question that's determined by judges and juries, and they're asking for you to determine that, which is a tough situation.
So my preferences would be in order. I don't know how quickly we can annex some of those new properties we own, but whether it be the potential parkland off Roy Riders or the two areas in Tomlin, but if we could annex those quickly, we own them, right? So it seems like that could be reasonably quickly. That would be my first preference, so of spaces where we would allow it, right? And we figure out, how to craft the code however you need to make those be the spaces. And then my second preference would be probably the Columbia Street lots next door to here. I think it's, I mean, where else are you gonna go? I mean, I'd rather have that than still Olson or Sunset.
And our parks, I mean, that nullifies our dusk to dawn park hours.
I think that you want to weigh in on some of this at this point, or you can wait till the end. I mean, I don't know if it nullifies the. Well,
I mean, if we're going to allow sleeping in parks, that to me means the parks are open.
I'm not a fan of that.
I think we were intending to do that with language we have.
No, I know we
No,
weren't, but if we
no,
say,
The parks and the.
Not even an option.
Oh, I
Yeah.
got you.
I'm not a fan of parks.
I'm not a fan of our parks.
yeah, I'm vacant lots, facilities and parks.
Any thoughts on, but appreciate that, Councilor Scott, and just really quickly on the Tonkin Glen area. There's one right off Morgan Street right now that's being used for staging construction. Eventually they'll get off the property, but our
It's a safety
long-term
thing,
plan
yeah.
there is to sell the property, potentially we can do a partition and
Yeah, but it buys us a couple of years' time. But we're not gonna
yes,
sell
it would buy us some time in a better location that's not gonna impact, a high number of residents of Sherwood is what I'd say. But for the interim, I mean, the things that popped up, and I understand all of these are unpopular. Park and ride here, associated with the arts building, I guess, with parking city vehicles there right now. There are some residents here, so that could be a bit of a concern. There's some single family.
That's not the
housing.
parking lot anymore, right?
It's still, we haven't signed a new agreement.
So-
So, the parking lot. This is a vacant lot, it's tough, there's a vacant lot right here, kind of, we maybe have to clear some brush, but this is across from Plaza. The old school site is vacant.
But wouldn't that be when it's within 1,000 feet of that school?
Very visible.
Yeah.
Just
Yes.
as it's.
Yeah, we'd have to make an exception to these areas, so we're talking about regardless of the code. Of course, the parking lot for the Cedar Creek Trail in here, relatively secluded from residences, although this is on the trail.
Brian, so we talked about this early on. What was the reservation about keeping our no camping ordinance in place except implementing the time component? So everything stays the same as far as no camping, but we lifted the 9 to 7 restriction. So that, because I guess in my mind, I'm still trying to figure out if we just left all those restrictions would still be in place right now. I like the idea of maybe finding someplace else, but in the interim, your initial is just we lift the 9 to 7.
We allow camping from that.
9 to 7. Because still, because we're still protected with private property. You're not camping on residents, you're not camping on public facilities, it's gonna be pretty limited. They're gonna have to still be creative. They're gonna be doing what they're already doing. So we're not asking them to change anything that they're currently doing that are using in our city. It buys us time to maybe look at some of these other lots that you're talking about. But it also addresses our immediate need to address this bill. Am I making sense?
Yeah,
I feel like we cover a lot of this just by lifting the hours.
But doesn't that mean that they could camp anywhere?
Yes, I think that's.
Well, they could, but can they? They can't, they still can't camp on a sidewalk. They can't camp in your front
Why
yard.
couldn't they?
Manner restrictions, I think, that plays in as an ADA concern. So,
Yeah, because those are still gonna all be in play for us. It's no different than anybody laying down on the sidewalk.
Yeah, but if it's not in our code, if we don't spell it out, then they could. If we just looked at the time.
So they'd be trespassing on private property, right? So if a home, if a business or other property owner was like, hey, it's personal property, it's private property, that's trespassing, so they're gone. We'd just be talking about city-owned property, allowing them to camp in the nighttime hours. So basically anything on this map that you see here, they'd be able to camp on. But I think we could potentially add that plus a simple restriction that would likely push people, let's say it's just residential, because you're really concerned about the residential areas. We could probably add that, and then it's just going to push people kind of to any of these locations in the town.
Because I'm hearing from residents that, well, what does this mean for the green space behind my house? What does this mean for, green spaces between, which, like you said, resident.
Where are they camping now?
Still,
Private properties.
So I was gonna make a point about this, is the code as it's written right now is a tool. And it's a tool for police to use when they need to enforce it, and they can constitutionally enforce it without problem on private property. That is not an issue. And so they don't always enforce it. It's relative to what's going on, what persons are experiencing. So as it's written right now, things are fine. We just can't have it blocking all city property.
This feels reasonable to me.
sorry, what is this?
Yeah, so I think, if we went down this thread, just to continue on this thread, so this is all residential and institutional public zones, so likely I think what we can do is just say all residential zones and parks. And then that would likely how this map would change is it would free up a little bit more in this area, so a lot of the city-owned outside residential are going to be, near, so we talk about old school site, Columbia Street lots, others in here, the police department would be available as well. These things are here. It would open up a little bit more, then you're not really selecting a loser, I guess.
But do we need to open up? I guess that's my question.
We haven't really talked about this sliver here.
Yeah, that's also one, that's part of the Langer storage. And behind there's a wetlands area.
Oh, so it's just wetland again.
Yeah.
Where we don't who's been buying all this wetland area?
And when the developer develops their property,
Okay.
usually the sensitive area comes to the city.
Oh, okay. So this area next to Cannery Square, I mean, I think that's a bad idea.
I would rather have it be less restricted, so that it's not really one area, and from what the problem is right now, it's really not really a problem. We would address what we can do for this, and then if we see a problem in the ordinance.
So I will tell you, the next challenge that's coming down the pipeline here is folks are getting creative with ADA, and they're making reasonable accommodations to cities that have ADA restrictions in place on camping. Just got an email about that today, so that's gonna be the next phase of litigation.
So,
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
So the Americans with Disabilities Act, if you have a disability, you can make a request for an accommodation for a city to.
That's
So a homeless person.
So if I don't have a ramp up-
Yeah, would say I don't have a ramp to get to the spot.
So it gets very tricky.
yeah,
One of the other things that we haven't talked about is the vehicles. I have a lot of concern that we designate any of these places in a vehicle, an RV gets on there, a trailer, we're gonna have a heck of a time moving it. It's gonna become,
Doesn't the language say campers?
So
it does, but it's going, I mean, it's gonna, it's gonna be time now, it's just adds a whole nother place.
Cities are struggling with getting rid of RVs. There's no place to take them.
Versus if we just lifted and restrict limited areas versus saying,
so let me ask this as a hypothetical. Let's say we open up the city parking lot here at City Hall. There's no legal place to park an RV, right? Could you kick them out just for illegal parking?
not for a few days.
Oh,
72 hours.
Yeah, and then, then again, it's, okay, who's towing the car? Because it's now their home
yeah.
and we're towing and there's been issues about tow bills and, who's on the hook for that. And there's just a lot of complexity that starts to add up with all this. So that's why just a little looser in my mind is where we're at and limiting the ability to bring vehicles in.
So can you sum up your recommendation again? Because I'd rather go. So can you sum up your recommendation again for me?
Yeah. When we first looked at this thing, what came to mind was let's just lift the hours. We already had no camping
Yeah.
ordinance. Leave that in place, but just lift the hours, so 9 to 7. You were allowed within some places and within the city to do that. Obviously, as we talked about, you're not gonna be camping on somebody's front yard. Private property is gonna have the ability to let you, if Walmart decides they're gonna let you pitch a tent, we're gonna let them do it. But, come 7 o'clock in the morning, we can go back in and say,
Yeah.
hey, it's time.
Even on private property.
Even on they could leave their RVs there. They could start, Walmart, nobody wants that. But I hate to say that, then that becomes their issue versus us saying dedicated a lot. Now, we have the burden to deal with.
Right, but so if we lift the hours though, that you're saying that solves the problem because they can camp anywhere in the city except for the public or private property and can they still go in our parks and camp there? It feels like they can, but we wouldn't have a way to kick them out really out of the parks then, right? Is
Well,
that
that's 7.
And it's 7 in the morning, we could.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I still think that means our hours of our parks are null. Anybody can hang out in the park at night.
Well, but in reality though, I know, and I'm not gonna throw anybody under the bus, but I know that some of my kids have gone to the park after hours. And I fully expect that,
Oh, my kids have gone with your kids.
hey, I said we're not gonna specifically throw kids under the bus.
You guys are on recording for city council.
But I would expect that, just like with that, if it's a problem where somebody's destroying, it's a tool for you to be able to kick them out of the park, but it's not like, I don't know, you don't have somebody posted at the door, right? Or the gate.
And this probably be a question for Ryan, can we separate loitering versus camping, like in a park? You know, you got these kids up there drinking, or hanging out, cutting up all our nets, doing those kind of things.
That's a fact specific
As long as they have 10.
Yeah, so I mean, we would,
You know, I think that's a good thought, Ty. I would not recommend adopting anything like that without also adopting our restrictions. That is, you cannot dig, right? You cannot defecate or urinate anywhere. You know, in public still, there's all kinds of things, right? No open flames, things of that nature. So we would need to put those restrictions there anyway. I think it would be a bad idea.
But I think what he's asking is we have that in place, but at the same time, you have no loitering. So, you know, dealing with people who are just up there causing trouble.
Yeah.
You go up there and kick out a kid who's
Yes.
hanging out, but not a
Yeah,
person can't.
absolutely. I mean, so in
In
our,
our, bring a tent next time.
in our definitions, we have definitions of persons experiencing homelessness. So I think that's a very distinguishable thing from a 16-year-old teenager down there, you know, drinking Mike's Hard Lemonade in the park or whatever teenagers drink these days.
They better not.
Jimmy.
No, yeah, whatever it is.
Ryan, do you know what the police department are doing?
Yeah, so Tiger is, they don't have a specific location. They have place restrictions, obviously, you know, similar to what we had. All of the cities, there was not really anything in this ordinance that I just created. That I changed the wording, but we took and borrowed from all the cities around us. So Tiger doesn't have a specific location. I haven't seen their ordinance. My understanding from communications with their staff is that they are planning where you can camp, not where you can't. So the specific location. Wilsonville is at City Hall in the area directly adjacent to that is an open field.
That's great.
And then North Plains doesn't have a place. They don't have a specific location. Hillsborough is working to create a year-round shelter. So they're gonna actually have some services, it looks like. Beaverton doesn't have a specific location. They have more where you can. As far as tent camping goes, with vehicles, they have safe parking locations. So they have a safe parking program, and that can be private individuals that own private property, you can apply to that. King City, it doesn't appear that they have a specific location. My last communication with their staff, they're gonna be your complaints.
So, Mayor, you mentioned you think it's a bad idea for that field next to Henry Square. Why is that?
Well, you have kids playing down there, we have events down there at night. I just think we
Right.
would react badly to that.
Community's gonna act badly.
Yeah, it's gonna be badly anywhere, but having it,
Right?
but part of it is like, if we have it right by City Hall, right by the police station, it also keeps an eye on it, right? So, you know what I mean? Like, it feels like it's, at the very least, shenanigans aren't happening that are hard to find because it's back in the middle of nowhere that. And so I kind of like that, especially if we're saying, hey, it's temporary till we could get one of, you know, the triangle piece in place, or, you know, it feels like that keeping it, at least keeping an eye on it, like some of these other cities are.
I've definitely heard from residents who were totally against, parks.
I'm not in favor of
And, you know, frankly, this Cannery Square does have a restroom right by it that's publicly accessible. I mean, I don't love it either, but it's,
I guess my pushback for the PD is our safety.
But I wouldn't want it.
okay, let's just take it away from the PD and say Cannery Square, is there a,
We're talking, are you talking this?
the field? Yeah, the field next to Cannery Square there.
Across from apartments,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because that's not within, that's within 50 feet.
Of what?
You could always make language adjustments to allow it if that's what you chose.
So now it sounds like we're going back to where you can, rather than where you can't.
Right, but if we just said, hey, for the next year, you know, for the next year, that's the place that we designate. And it's nearby, you could, I don't think you could park an RV there.
Well, but what about the vehicles that they do have? They're driving up into the field then?
It's a neighborhood.
Well,
Street parking?
yeah, street parking, but they would be able to street park anyway, right? And in fact, I don't think this is even addressing, if I parked my car on the street and I decided to sleep in it, if it's an illegal parking spot, it does seem like that.
Sure.
Is that allowed now?
Other statutes would apply to that. I mean, here's Taylor, just to address your issue
Okay.
with this. That there's two separate bills. There's 3115 and 3124, right? We're not addressing 3124 right now. That's the notice requirements on towing vehicles.
Okay,
That's moving campsites. The
okay,
frustrating thing that I think it helps the public understand is that when the legislature passed 3115, they didn't define two things. First of all, they didn't define what an established campsite is. And they didn't define whether or not camping, tent camping, and vehicle camping were the same thing.
yeah.
That's gonna be litigated, and I don't know where that's gonna go. I wish I could tell you.
Well, so push back on this idea of Cannery Square. Obviously, it's very visible and we don't want it, we don't want it, we don't want camp cities
I would
anywhere.
put it where the community garden is before I put it there.
Okay, that's right near the fire station. I'm sure the police would love to throw it over to the fire department. Just kidding.
I'm okay with that one.
I mean, the thing and what I've been really happy with the people that have been here already is you just don't see them. They're not visible. And we gotta remember that this, by law and by definition, they have to be able to move in at 7. We're not going to have established camps unless they outright, say no, then other things kick into play that we address it within a few days, but these people that are out, they've done really well. I mean, I know we do get calls on tarps and some campsites here and there on the trails. They've been cleaned up pretty quick. It seems like they're abandoned most of the time. It's, and, we don't know if it's been kids or if it's been campers back there, but
And does your team take care of that cleanup or Craig's or who does that?
typically it's we go out, make contact and find out what's going on.
Yeah.
And public works would come down if they could and clean up whatever was down.
Okay.
But that's, over the years, it's been the exception.
Yeah, but that's just it. So if we said, hey, we've got this place, the Cannery Square adjacent area, or community garden, I don't really care either, but we're saying that this will be our solution for the next year, and it's already infrequently. I mean, the only reason why I like that spot is because it's got the bathroom next to it, and so if I was in a camp, I would like that, but,
Isn't the bathroom locked at night?
oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's locked.
Okay, never mind.
Well, if you could just, it's all time, do we want to?
Well, I mean, it keeps people from using other parts of our,
Yeah, if I'm
Sidewalks.
gonna have a poop on the ground versus, you know what I mean, I'd rather. We're trying to make the best of a bad
it
situation.
could also be.
So this creates
stored.
other problems. The other thing that comes up is, I hate to displace those that have been established within the city, and they find their places that they go, and now we're saying, hey, you've got to pick up. Because that'd be the expectation, although we know that there are people that camp in certain areas out here, are we gonna go round them up and say, the only place you can be is here? I don't think I'm a big
I
fan
think
of
it's
that.
just another tool for you if you're having a problem.
Well, and so I'm just looking at the
But
level
fair
of
enough,
perception of, okay, well, what is gonna be expected of us? If somebody's being seen or is known, because I know I can think of two that are here almost year round and you don't see them. But very rarely are we gonna go rob them out of where they've been.
I wouldn't say to do that. I wouldn't.
I would say unless our lawyer says that by not doing that, it makes it harder to enforce, but I think it's like what Tim said, that it's another tool for you. If there's a problem,
If someone new
If
comes
somebody's-
in some other area, that's a problem.
Because we have that
Well,
issue
you
right
can-
now because we ban it and we let it continue.
Yeah.
We already have that issue.
The risk would be that someone makes a constitutional claim for discriminating what's called an as applied basis. I'm less concerned about that, and I would stand in front of a judge straight faced all day if we treat people like human beings, and don't rouse them out of the site because that's where they've been. I think that's one I think.
Grandfather.
I would defend that as, right, like, let's treat people like people, and I think for the most part, we can stay out of trouble that way. Not guaranteed, but it's helpful. But
What are the current hour restrictions?
It's 9 PM to 7 AM.
You can only camp on a property 9 PM to 7 AM.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what we're proposing.
What time do the events end? Do the events go after 9 PM at the plaza?
I mean, Robin Hood doesn't go, they're not in the plaza though, they're the beer garden until 10. But that's,
Water's in there.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of this is premised on the assumption that we are going to have an influx of folks coming.
right,
And that's we have to think of this as like a parade of horribles, right? But I think we have some time. You know, if this becomes an issue, we can ad hoc address it as we go. But
Is there a fence all the way around the community garden? Or at least on the, I know there is on the yard side, but along that.
Keep the highway signs open.
Would we have to actually remove the community garden? And there's not a lot of space there for, I mean, there's gravel between. Zoom enhance.
A lot of irrigation.
Oh, yeah, I guess there's some room there, yeah. I know, but all of this,
It's all irrigated for future.
I know it's irrigated, but is it turned on? Like, will they get wet if you put a camp, a
oh,
tent
they'll
up?
have the irrigation destroyed though, if they're putting
Oh,
10
true.
stakes into the ground.
the other thing we would need to adjust if we did that in our manner restrictions is right now we say that a person without alternative shelter may not camp within 150 feet of another campsite. The language there was an effort to prevent what I call.
We're now
intensity
talking about.
campsites. Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure these people aren't gonna be thrilled.
Correct.
That's why I was
Take her
asking.
on the
I was
apartments
asking,
that
that's what-
counter.
that's why I was asking if there was a fence there.
Can you show me where cannery, the lots?
Can we just put, instead of, we're talking about the whole lot, can we just fence out a 40 by 50 area? It's not like we need a lot of space.
Well, we don't.
Huh?
We could expand that as.
We could expand it as,
50 between units.
We have to get rid of that.
well, like make exceptions for that. Yeah.
Those trees aren't there.
Yeah, they are.
They are.
Yeah, I picked up garbage on our trash day all through there. Yeah. In fact, this area is cleaner than it's ever been.
You will never hesitate to make a trash palooza.
I know, I'm a big fan, but Tim, I like that idea though, but like, even if we just said, hey, you know, I mean, you got trees and shade, so it's actually kind of a nice,
There's no shade needed.
well, oh, true.
But I'm just saying, keep it away from the road.
Yeah, to have some, more of a
Create a
buffer.
buffer.
Yeah, because you got a good neighbor on this side, you got a railroad on this side that's not used, and even, and I know we do have the planning commission, we've approved the development here, right?
It's not.
Oh, it's not moving forward, okay, well, so even most of the across the street neighbor, I mean, it's really only this part right here that
Cannery.
has got,
Does, Craig, do you have concerns about that next public works or what's your thought?
Sure. I mean, we gotta have a place. We'll deal with it. What about some?
And vandalism, yeah.
if we got cameras or something there maybe, or motion.
You've got cameras up in the building because you got light. You get out there, there's no light.
Get infrared cameras, you can do it.
I just think it's, I don't know. I'm sure with the schoolhouse.
You could deal with this one.
I said, I think the schoolhouse lot might be preference. I think it's
Why is that?
control too.
I can't agree to that.
Why would the schoolhouse one be better in your view, Doug?
I just think it's more visible, more easier to control.
I feel like that one's got more residential neighbors, but I don't know, let's zoom in on it.
Well, it's right next to the school.
Yeah.
Public would not like that.
Thoughts on, do we get a lot of people on trails in the evening, 9 PM to?
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
I was wondering
What'd you say
about that
now?
parking lot too,
Right.
that spot, that still some parking lot maybe.
Well,
How
that's-
about-
That's where people used to.
Yeah. How about the Cedar Creek Trail?
Yeah.
We don't,
Yeah, because then people will just park their car in there instead of pretty, but you can't kick them out in the morning.
Yeah,
Not a car.
It's public.
How much-
Otherwise, yeah.
How much of the Cedar Creek Trail area, is there any possibility of, I can't remember if those are all trees or can we, like, no, go back down here.
We do have this area here, by the way. This is
Oh.
city owned up here, but it's close to the trail.
What's
Oh,
12? What's 12 to do again?
They haven't put an ordinance out, but what the staff has told me is that they're similar to the restrictions that we have in place right now, more where you can't camp than where you can.
Well, let's go back up.
The reason I asked that question is because if we're easier than 12 and 10, vice versa,
A fun.
go funnel.
Yeah, so wait, go back up to this Cedar Creek one here. So this one, it is by the trail, but from 9 to 7.
That's pretty steep.
Oh, is it? Oh, what about this side of it?
That's,
Steep
that's.
and then water,
that's-
right?
Yeah, they have to
Okay.
be up here. Yeah.
Okay. And then is there any, again, is there any grass? I can't remember this area. This is a big hill, but is any of this or any of this?
That's slow. You want
Oh.
to slow tree.
Okay.
Goes back to ways flat. It goes up the hill.
Give you the parking lot.
I know the parking lot though, then we're back to the problem of I park an RV there, right?
Or a car.
Or a car.
I think you fence off an area in the garden or just right up against railroad track, downtown,
In the cannery.
in the cannery, in that far right corner, which we're looking at the map. Keep,
Do we have a concern or do neighborhood?
that's.
Do we have consensus one way or the other, whether it's cannery or yard?
I like cannery.
I like cannery.
Yeah.
Until we can annex some of that. other
That
property.
triangle, yeah.
And then once we
And
annex
with
it.
the-
So
with
we're
the
trying-
language
I didn't
in
see-
the prefatory on the,
I feel like if you could kind of go like a fence line for that first tree there in the upper.
Right here?
No, over to your left. To your left, to the, yeah, like right there, like
Yeah.
everything to the right of that would be better.
Well, I would go,
You'd go less distance than that.
I'd go like this, I'd go like this. Keep it off the road here.
Towards the back.
Towards the back.
Well, they're gonna want you back there.
so it sounds like we have a single place picked out, is that?
Well,
But
it
is
also
that-
sounds like if we keep that 150 feet, then that's gonna be.
Well, then we get that too. No, we would take the 150 feet. off.
Okay. All right.
But then I think once we bring other land in.
Yes.
We readdress that. and move it.
And that'll be in the whereases.
I gotta work on some messaging for the community around this, because it's
So-
understand it first.
So if you permit, that's the only other thing, and I'm talking on your behalf here, but I'd like to get some guidance on what messaging would look like, so we can make sure we do a better job.
We have to say, the state is mandating us to do this. This is the best option we could come up with at this time, until we come up with a better option.
And we're open to ideas if you want to read the law.
Open in ideas, and we wanted to keep it out of our parks. I mean, just talk about where we wanted to keep it out of. And where this is really the only spot we had until we can bring more land in.
Open to ideas, I agree with it, but I would say, like, we can't keep prolonging, because we really gotta get something.
No, we gotta get this in place. I mean, the ideas.
We're open ideas for future changes.
I do want to step back, we're talking a lot about the Van Donald property, Triangle property. Just don't know if that's gonna be a viable option going forward. We have
Might be for a while.
rented that space, we rented that space to Schnitzer, who's currently doing public.
What about the property on one of our others? Oh, we rented that out too.
Yeah, that's being rented out too.
By the way, we need to.
Is he on the land?
That's actually the Roy Rogers county property. I mean, he said the county is not, the city annex, it's being leased out. And we would anticipate as we would move to start doing the work next spring on Ice Age Drive, that would probably be a staging area. We could use that Van Donald and that triangle as well, we need to use the staging for that, so I just want to say viability.
So we don't have any future property.
But this may be something in the next 10 years we have to move around.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Can I just, for sake of clarity and for the record, we go back and look at this, can I restate what we've talked about, so I have some clarity on it, just in case there's objection? My understanding is that we kept everything in place except the 150-foot neighbor campsites, and then we locate folks in the
Can
campus
we
square.
adjust that to 20-foot neighbor?
Yeah,
or
we
something
could.
like
I
that?
mean,
Like,
150 feet unless you're in that designated area.
Well, I don't think that would apply, because there is no other.
There's not gonna be another
designated.
distance, yeah.
yeah,
Okay, well, whatever works, yeah.
but I'm just saying, can we just say, 20-foot or some other thing so that, again, it's not everybody on top, but again, I don't know
How about
if I'm over engineering.
How about we go out there, walk it, figure out what's reasonable, and
Yeah.
put that number in.
Yes, that's some engineering and planning staff, gets the square footage, the length by width, figure out how many people can camp there based on restriction.
And then, I like, and again, if, in terms of trying to treat people like humans, I would look into potentially unlocking the bathroom as well, right? And, but
I want to hear from these two about that. We start having problems once they get over there. I mean, she said, worried about their safety. We have 50 people working out of that location, even though it's gonna be in the evenings and we're not around. But I'm just, you got thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars that you put in that water.
so can we make it,
I have no problem with them being next to us.
yeah,
I'm just letting you know, we've had issues in the past.
How easy is it for them to get into the law?
They get in, they just cut the fence.
oh, I was gonna say, are there security upgrades that we could
But I
do?
mean, it's no different than if you put them next to any commercial.
I think if someone wants to get in there and rob you or do something, I don't think it matters what camp is, they're gonna do it, right?
And,
Yeah.
and even if we did razor wire or anything like that, or cameras, they're still gonna figure out a way in, right? If,
Craig, do you have reservations about the bathroom being open all night? Like from a maintenance perspective or anything? Yeah, listen. What about from a safety perspective? Walk themselves in there?
Yeah,
People in
Yeah,
there?
I would go in and do whatever.
okay, well, let's,
I think that's a-
Where are they going
okay.
to use
I'm just
that?
trying, I'm looking for like, what do you guys think? Is it a good idea to open the bathroom at night or not a good idea to open the bathroom?
because if they're gonna be going to the bathroom on the ground.
I'm worried about the safety and maintenance aspect. of it.
I know, but the alternative is where, right? Again, we're doing the best with a bad situation.
Right, but
Are
if
they gonna
somebody,
walk
if
to
I'd
wall?
rather have poop on the ground than somebody being raped in a bathroom, or somebody shooting up in a bathroom.
What about a
Porta potty, I would rather not have a porta potty on it. We've got a bathroom right there, right? I mean, how is a porta potty on it gonna be any safer? It seems like,
And that's not a question we have to answer tonight
Yeah.
with this ordinance,
Yeah, let's
so
get the.
let's think on that.
Okay.
We've got a better location where you're put in here versus the community garden. You got people that's got gardens.
Yeah, I agree. The gardens would be trashed.
Because no matter, it's gonna be right next to our facility.
They'd be eating all of it.
I know,
That's what I mean.
yeah, so I know it's not.
Make it bad, like, it's not
Still
stealing,
needs that
that's
conversation. Does anybody have any further issues with the way that I described the way that we'll write this ordinance and send out? I know it's not popular, I know it's not fun, but
So write it up, send it out there, but ideally, we need to have the first reading, June 6th through 6th.
it needs to happen.
So I had sent Tim and Keith a link to some public, so Beaverton did some really good, communication with this, because I feel like the communities that were sort of sliding it under because of so much talk about the levy and this and that, but they're all of a sudden, they're like, what is, this city's Hillsboro's doing this, what is Sherwood doing? So just something that says, we've had a work session here, we've had a work session here, we've had a work session here, this is what's being proposed, so that there's something our citizens know that we've been talking about this for a long time.
That's all that kind of language we talked about. This is why we're doing it here. This is what we're trying to avoid. We could even schedule a town hall for late June.
And this is
for people
why
to
we're
come and
having,
ask questions.
Yeah,
this is why we're having to do it.
I
because
told
of-
Keith that today, maybe a town hall would be appropriate, up to you. I'm happy to show up and talk through the history
I'll
of
show up too.
what we've done.
But I mean, before our first public hearing, something like what I sent you that we can share,
Oh, and we can get information.
yeah.
Thanks for all your hard work on this. I know it's not pleasant. Appreciate the work.
Okay.
Thank you.
those look like the levees. good stuff.
Levy fest.
So.
Meetings adjourned.
Stop, stop.
Stop, stop, it's at 58%.
Yeah, it's